Hello and welcome. I am Nina, your friendly online HR and people ops professional, here with another Workplace Wisdom Wednesday. Today, I want to tell you that you need an emergency fund. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term emergency fund, an emergency fund is typically a certain number of months' income that you save in case of an emergency. Those emergencies can include unexpected home repairs or unexpected medical bills or other urgent expenses that come along that you hadn't planned for or budgeted for. The emergency fund is only used for emergencies, and it sort of helps you weather the storm when unexpected things come up. Now, if you are someone who is currently employed, maybe you feel really secure in your employment. Maybe you think your job isn't going anywhere. This is the kind of year where you really want to have an emergency fund. And it is because people are unfortunately being laid off and losing their jobs left and right. And the employment market is pretty tough for a lot of professionals. Last week, 1 million people filed for unemployment in the US. Okay, these are big numbers. Even if you were someone who's like, look, I've been at my company for a number of years, we're good, we're fine, it's still a really good idea. And in fact, now's the best time to start building an emergency fund. When you are the most secure in your career, when you're making, good money, you're able to pay for your day-to-day expenses plus a little bit more, plus restaurants or vacations or whatever. If you are able to do that, you are able to start building an emergency fund, okay? The reason why it's important to have an emergency fund is not just for those expenses that I talked about, right? Sudden car repairs, medical bills, etc. It's also in case, heaven forbid, you lose your job. If you lose your job, having a buffer to help you while you search for a new job and find new employment will be a game changer, okay? If you do not have any emergency funds, here's what's gonna happen. If you get a severance agreement from your company, you're probably gonna have to sign it no matter what the terms are. Oftentimes those terms mean you can never talk about any bad experiences you've had at the company. You're basically agreeing that even if you think you were wrongfully terminated, there's nothing you're gonna do about it, things like that. And oftentimes severance packages aren't necessarily generous, especially if companies are laying people off because they're financially strapped, right? It also creates the option of not having to accept the first job that you are offered. When we're unemployed, when it's a tough job market, we often will take the first job that we can get and we will ignore flags, we will ignore trying to find the right fit and the right job. If you have an emergency fund for a few months, it gives you a little bit of flexibility to think, well, do I have other options? If this job just seems like the worst job in the world, but they're offering it to me, maybe I can say no. Maybe I'm early enough in the process that I have a little bit of buffer to make an intentional decision about what my next career and my next job is going to be, right? The importance of an emergency fund is that it gives you options and it creates comfort for you, which is of course an excellent combination. How do you create an emergency fund? Well, first you want to figure out how much you need to save. How I develop my emergency fund is I do a 6-month fund. That's what I recommend as a version 1 emergency fund. As you go through your career more, as you get more experienced in your finances, you may want that number to be smaller because you have insurance and things like that that will cover most emergencies. You may want it to be larger because you want to be able to be taken care of for a year if you need to. It really just depends. But I would say 6 months is a good starting goal. The second thing you need to do is you need to figure out, well, how much money is that, right? How much money do I need to save? I would make 2 budgets. The first budget I would make is how much does it cost for you to take care of your bare bone must-have expenses, okay? Bare bones groceries, no takeout, no Starbucks, none of that. But the bare bones groceries, your bare bone rent payments, car payments, things like that. Things that in a given month you would really have to pay for. It is probably gonna be an uncomfortable budget, right? Because you're not gonna be able to, you can't go to the movies now anyway, but you're not gonna be able to go to the movies, you're not gonna be able to go to concerts, you're not gonna be able to kind of have any frills, right? That's the first budget. The second budget that you wanna create is more or less, what does your budget look like now? How much are you spending right now? Probably ignore things that you're saving up for future vacations, stuff like that. But if you spend money on clothes or restaurant outings and things like that, how much is your monthly budget, right? And then I would probably, what I've done that I have found helpful is I sort of take the average of the two numbers. So that way I have a little bit of buffer when I'm thinking about an emergency fund, and that's a good initial goal. If you have an emergency fund where you're like, oh my gosh, every dollar needs to be spent very intentionally, it's a relief, but it's not as much of a relief as being like, okay, well, if I still wanna go out or get coffee with you know, a potential employer or do informational interviews, I'm not like, oh my God, I'm spending $5 on a latte and I don't have the budget for it, right? So again, it gives you a little bit of a buffer. So I would pick something that is your bare bones plus a little bit extra when thinking about the total amount. And then of course, what's 6 months of that? That's the number you're working towards. If you have passed out because that number seems very large to you, don't worry. Most people are not able to build their emergency funds overnight. That's why you need to start now, and you need to be intentional. You need to pick a regular contribution goal. Same way that hopefully you may be contributing to retirement funds, things like that. This is the place to start. If you can set aside 2% of your paycheck, even 1% of your paycheck, maybe you're like, I can do $100 a week. I don't know, right? That's something that is between you and your budget. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because you're reducing the amount of money that you're spending on the things you normally spend on. But one of the realities, especially for people who are living in places right now where things are not necessarily open, you have a lot of opportunity to reallocate funds. For example, I am not getting haircuts. I'm not getting my eyebrows done, okay? Don't tell me that you can tell that in the comments. But I'm not really going out to restaurants because restaurants in my area are relatively closed. So all of the money that I would kind of be spending on things like that, I would allocate to my emergency fund. I'm not gonna be like, oh, well, now I'm gonna get takeout more. I just decide in my mind that, look, that money that I was gonna be spending on other things, let me start reallocating that to an emergency fund. I'm telling you, it might take you a year to build the emergency fund, but as aggressively as you can build it, if you're starting from 0 months, like maybe you build the first 3 months pretty aggressively, and then the 3 to 6 month build, you let yourself, you know, allocate a little bit less. But I want you to really prioritize the emergency fund, because if you are taking away anything from what's happening in the world around us, it's that things can come out of nowhere, and it's good to be prepared. And the reality is, one of the ways to be prepared is financially. If you have a little bit of buffer financially, it will make what can already be a really terrible, really shameful, really uncomfortable experience a little bit easier, because you are not wondering how you're gonna pay rent, and you're not wondering how you're gonna pay for your groceries, right? It gives you options. Money gives you options. Money gives you opportunity to negotiate. Money gives you opportunity to not accept the first shitty offer that you get in your job search. So the more financial security you can build for yourself, the better and easier it's gonna be to weather unexpected storms. Please let me know if you have any questions about this. I am by no means a financial advisor or an expert in that field, but I do take a lot of interest in personal finance, and I'm happy to provide additional resources to get you going around this. If you're looking for sites to start thinking about it, I would definitely recommend Bitches Get Riches. They write incredible articles about everything from retirement to emergency funds to things like that in a really fun and layman's terms kind of way. I would also check out You Need a Budget, YNAB. They have excellent articles, blogs, forums about how to start thinking of your budget. And I think they write and update really great resources of how to think about your budget. So get an emergency fund going. I promise you, it's not going to be comfortable, but it should be important enough to prioritize, especially in a year like this. If you think that your job is untouchable, this year should teach you that that's not necessarily the case. That's just the reality. I also want you to really think about the fact that many people genuinely can't afford emergency funds. They're living without livable wages. That is a huge problem in this country and for so many people. If you're not in that situation, you owe it to yourself to build some buffer so that you're not super frazzled if something happens. Plus, then you also have that emergency fund for things like a broken dryer or, you know, an unexpected car battery dying. With that, it's Wednesday. You're halfway through the week. I'm so excited. If you're watching this in realish time, have a wonderful long Labor Day weekend if you're able to get that time off. I will talk to you next Wednesday. Stay safe, stay sound. Bye.